going to try and get underway here. It's Saturday, the 15th of March. First of our Saturdays here together. All so excited. Yay, they shouted. And half of the world believed them. We have Alistair back from the Ways and Means Committee. See, he didn't want to leave. Didn't want to leave. House Bill 1265 is before us first. House Bill 1265, we are second on the bill. And we started a discussion on it yesterday. I believe that others have had discussions. Did you have an amendment that you wanted to press? All right, Delegate Grammer has an amendment to press on the bill, and we're going to hear the amendment. What's the number?
103220.
All right.
Okay.
103222. Tell us what the amendment does.
So this is in relation to the issue with the juvenile sex crimes loophole that we found last year, but we couldn't get in last year's legislation. So this is relevant to the mother whose 3-year-old daughter was raped. She had issues informing the school, the local school system. They didn't know that the alleged rapist was being placed back in public schools, and subsequently he ended up being placed back in Baltimore City schools. So what this amendment does is kind of closes this loophole, and it does 3 small things. It expands law currently part of 3307, which is rape. Only part of that charge, it requires people to register on the juvenile sex offender registry. So it instead of including part of 3307 rape, it includes all of 3307 rape. And just so you know, the charge is sex, let me be specific here, engage in sexual act with another if the victim is 14 or 15 years old and engage in sexual contact with another if the victim is under the age of 14 years and the person performing the sexual contact is at least 4 years older than the victim. That was the crime that the juvenile was charged with. Second, it makes all of 3307 a reportable offense, so the schools would be informed of it. And the third change is that it requires that the registrant remain on the juvenile registry until they age out at 21, which is the age that the juvenile leaves the prerogative of the juvenile system. So what that final part means is even though they've left custody, they've left prerogative of the juvenile system, it would keep them on that shielded registry, so everyone would be informed as to the history of that individual. So this is, with the previous amendment, we've taken some things out of the reportable offenses. This puts the full rape charge into the reportable offenses, makes that charge put juveniles on the registry and keep them on the registry until they kind of age out. So I would move the amendment and ask for a second.
Motion and a second. Delegate Grammer, tell us again the part of third-degree sex offense that you're adding.
Engage in sexual contact with another if the victim is under the age of 14 years and the person performing the sexual contact is at least 4 years older than.
So they'd be 18?
No.
At least 4 years older than the victim?
Yes.
So there's a chance that they would be that, but more often than not, they're going to be over 18.
Could be.
Okay, so this, generally speaking, does not apply to kids in school. That's generally speaking. It could, but it does not generally do that. The other part of this is that this is effectively the legislation that Delegate Grammer has brought that's still live before the committee. So being that this is a bill that's coming duly assigned from Ways and Means, and they haven't heard that bill, Ways and Means and Judiciary, I'd ask the committee to oppose the amendment. Delegate Schmidt.
I have a question for the bill sponsor. Or for the amendment sponsor, could you have 18 or 19-year-olds in school? I mean, would that be part of it?
You could. And look, these are people who are convicted of these crimes. And just so everybody's aware, This registry, as we talked about yesterday, the file, it's all completely confidential. So it really gets at the idea of what reportable offenses are, why they're important. We want the schools to be informed. As in the situation in Howard County, the superintendent said, I wouldn't have made that placement if I had known the record. And that's really what it gets at.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My understanding is that the victim has to be under the age of 14, but doesn't necessarily have to be 14. So the victim is under 14. Let's say the victim is 12 and the perp is 4 years older. The perp is 16 then. So it doesn't affect 18-year-olds. It affects any perp that's over 4 years older than the victim. The victim is required to be under 14. So that's why in this case, I believe the perpetrator was 15 at the time and the child was 3. And two and three, two victims are 2 and 3. So that would encompass what occurred in that situation. So. This is what he was charged with. You can ask DJS.
Well, I was just going to say, one just bit of context. This is a jointly assigned bill. It originated in Ways and Means. There was a little group that met, a bipartisan group, to look at some of the requested items from various bills and minority party bills in particular. And one of the provisions that came in, just again for context, was the peeping Tom crime got added in to deal with a specific situation from one of the other bills. And the chair of Ways and Means had opinions about things to modify. And I put this out there just to suggest, you know, on crossover Saturday, it's sort of, you know, this is where the bill is at this point with, you know, them having taken a little bit from each side. And so we certainly could change it to add another bill in. But I do believe whatever the balance is that's here has been looked at by multiple people. So we'd have to unwind this thing back through the process for additional discussion. So for what it's worth.
I would say to both Delegate Moon and the chair, you guys have seen me pull that off here at the last minute. And I'm happy to go to Ways and Means and make the sale. And look, if they don't take it, it is what it is. But, you know, I think the thing about these crimes is I've always said, whether it's this or expungement, like if we could bring someone in here and show an example of this specific change, like this is like a very teeny tiny change in this bill. And if we can actually bring a victim here and say like, wow, we failed that person, I think it's worth at least exploring. So I'm happy to go over to Ways and Means and make the case. If they say no, it is what it is. But I think the committee, you know, the committee's, it's half of the bill, and I think we should at least take a shot on behalf of that family.
I think it gets a little bit more complicated than that when you ask, like, why isn't it child abuse? So it depends on the relationship of the two. So in one case, it was child abuse, and the case was closed with the perpetrator leaving the home with another parent. So that's how it was resolved and how they ended up in a different home. And then in that circumstance, they were not, the child wasn't in the home. The child was a different household. And so they re-offended. And then, of course, that was just, you know, simple crime.
And I think that the issue with child abuse is the child does have to be in the custody or under the supervision of the minor, and so that is the difference there. There's a difference between those two things, so I accept that. I kind of was going down this path, though, because we have a million different potential scenarios here, and it's the Saturday before crossover, and the bill hasn't even made it to the Senate yet. So I'm trying to figure out how to keep it moving. Delegate Pasteur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to get connections between the amendment and this bill. This bill needs to happen. This is a problem. Not notify folks about who is in the building and how to handle that. So this is a bill long overdue. But I'm hearing and I might have missed this in some of the conversation, in the amendment, that is a steps above this and beyond this, that needs to be its own bill? Has somebody already said that? Okay. Because what you do with the person about whom you're speaking is a separate thing that doesn't exist, that school systems have no handle on. So I'm thinking like, I'm feeling like it's something missing, because that is too big to me to be an amendment for this. Am I making sense to anybody? Like when we start talking about what we do with the child and how the person who's committed the offense and where that person should go, how long it should stay, that has its own life. And I think that needs to be considered with intention and focus, as opposed to being pushed into something else.
I don't agree with that whatsoever, because what reportable offenses are about is making sure the schools are aware of what's going on with a student. What this amendment does is actually make sure the schools are aware of what's going on with the student. What we're essentially doing is two things here. We're adding a crime to the reportable offenses list, which is what this bill is about. And the reason we keep them on the registry is because the schools see that. And that's why the student was placed back in school, is because when the youth left the prerogative of the juvenile system, the schools can no longer see that student. So the whole purpose of the three teeny tiny provisions in this bill are frankly, the three changes in the bill are to make schools aware. And just to be clear, you know, we could talk about child abuse, but that wasn't what this youth was charged with. And I also don't know if that's a reportable offense. I don't think it's the case. So that doesn't help us here. So I actually, in the full spirit of retaining to the subject matter of the bill is about making sure schools are informed. That's why I brought a very similar bill. And this is, frankly, just one small offense that I think we're really just including it in the bigger scope of what reportable offenses are.
Okay, clearly, there was no understanding to what I said, because what I said is exactly what you are pointing out. So let me just say it one more time. This reportable offenses for school personnel to have it, to know who's in the building, know what to be able to do with that child is critical. That's why I said this bill is a bill long overdue in that regard. What I'm saying about your amendment is, as I understand it, is maybe even more important than this. That's what I'm saying, that to put it in, just stick it in with this is not going to help. Because guess what? When I know what a reportable offense is, because I was always an administrator where everybody had a reportable offense or could have had one. So, and insisted that I know. So here was the problem. What do we do with the children? Where are they going to go? That's why I'm saying what you're saying is a bill. I see it as its own bill, because systems need to process. What are you going to where are you going to send? What are you going to do with these children? There are no outlets. There are no places. They should not be back in that school. And the administrators need to know. Whenever I had one and somebody told me, I was told, but don't tell anyone in the building. Don't tell your administrators. That's ridiculous. So no, I'm agreeing with what you're saying. I'm just saying it's bigger, and I would hate to see it attached to just first reporting to a school person, and then now they know, and then the question is, now what do I do? that we need to be focusing on what you're asking in that amendment. I hope that made sense that time.
And I would say we've known about this problem for years. We've actually passed legislation to provide alternative placements for sex offenders. And then we found that it didn't apply to juveniles, and we added it in a bill last year. We tacked it on at the last minute. Yeah, it's a problem. We tacked it on just the way someone's offering this amendment. And Delegate Arcon said last year, there's still a loophole because we've had a 3-year-old raped, and that bill didn't cover it. So we've known about this loophole for at least a year. So, you know, I'd say we do have the alternative placements, which we've talked about for years, you know, starting with the issues in Parkville and the offender who went back to school and turned out to rape 3 girls. We've known about the issues with juveniles as late as last year, and we were happy to fix that in a very similar fashion. I think, you know, what we're talking about here is, frankly, one crime on statute that one victim has fallen through the cracks. So it's not a huge change. It's very much in tune with the bill, both in spirit and in technical nature. We've known about this issue forever. We've let the mother of the child who was raped actually went to the bill signing last year because she thought she was made whole. She was on the news. She got a picture with hugging the governor. She said, "I thought everything was okay," and then come to find, like, no, there's another loophole. So we've known about this problem for a long time. When you're right, you're right. I feel really good about this. It's very much in tune with the bill. It's something we can get done here at the last minute. I think Ways and Means would be open to help us out, and I'd ask the committee to support the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I move the previous question.
Previous question. Is there a second? Motion and a second. All in favor of moving the previous question will say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? We are on the question of the amendment. All in favor of Delegate Grammer's amendment, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The amendment is defeated. We're on the bill. There's, we are moving it with the Ways and Means amendments that are there. Is there any further discussion on the bill as amended?
Yeah, I made the motion. And second.
Is motion and seconded. Seeing no other comments on the bill as amended by Ways and Means, the Vice Chair?
Yes.
Yes. Valentine?
Mr. Chair, can I just explain my vote?
Briefly.
My only concerns are the fact that the assault second degree was removed, the motor vehicle thefts were removed, and the burglary first were removed. Other than that, I know that a lot of work was put into this legislation, but I will be voting no. Thank you.
No. Tomlinson? No. Embry? Yes. Pasteur? Yes. Tolles? Yes. Schmidt? Yes.
I also agree that taking out the car theft, the vehicle theft, and the second degree is a concern for me, so I'm going to be a no at this time. I think it's
No.
a start. Thank you.
Simmons? Yes. Yes. Boucher? Yes. Yes. Phillips? Yes. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think this was a wonderful discussion between Delegate Grammer and the rest of his colleagues, and I don't disagree. But what I will say is sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. This is a good piece of legislation, and we need to move it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Stinnett? Yes. Yes. Congolo? No, I'd like to explain my vote. Go ahead.
I think that the intentions are good. Obviously, we want children to be safe. However, I feel like that there were too many common offenses committed by youth that were removed from this piece of legislation. I'm particularly saddened that the amendment didn't move forward because clearly in the bill, it states that students who commit a sexual offense, that the school is required to remove them from the school bus and the school where the victim attended, which means that they can be moved to another school and possibly commit that offense elsewhere. So with that being said, my vote is no.
Eric Hand? No. No. Taylor? Yes. Yes. Simpson?
I really do appreciate this legislation, the amount of work that went into it. It's extremely important. And I do appreciate my seatmate, and especially, and I do think it is something that we have to work on, because obviously there are cracks that we need to take care of, but I don't necessarily think the final hour is the time to do it. Let's make sure that it's good legislation that's going to work.
Grammer? No. Sample Hughes? Not here. Moon?
Yes, I can explain my vote.
Yes.
I'm a yes on this, and I just want to make clear that in the years we've had this bill, some of the school systems were pretty clear that one of the things that would happen is they would not allow students who have these reportable offenses to attend school as normal with all of the other kids. And so some of the offenses, again, like peeping Tom, went in as a reportable offense, but something like assault, second-degree assault, which encompasses all the school fights, they felt it was inappropriate, and I would tend to agree, to have that be an offense where the kids can't attend another school after they've had a fight. So it encompasses a wide range of fights, so I think this is a reasonable step forward. Thank you.
Conaway? Yes. Yes. Kaufman? Yes. Yes. Williams? Yes. Yes. The favorable motion passes. Now, House Bill 238, a blast from the past, has been held on third reader. The vice chair has we need to make a floor amendment, and she's going to explain it. It's included in your packets.
Okay, I'll explain it really quickly. So the amendment puts the law back to where it was, and that is with respect to complaints made by the public. The intent of the bill was to Section D in the bill, and was to include internal complaints. Can I see the bill for a second? Was to include internal complaints, which it does at Section D, because of the language that says that charges arising out of an investigation of an alleged police officer misconduct that is not required to be reviewed by the Administrative Charging Committee. That in itself means internal complaints. So therefore, we don't need to mess with C, because C was going to state that it would have been 1 year and a day from when the law enforcement agency became aware of the incident. That was not what was the intent of the bill. It was not meant to mess with when the public complaint was made, because if you see the sentence before that, it says the investigation starts immediately upon receiving the complaint. So I move the amendment.
There's a motion for the amendment. Is there a second? And a second. Any further discussion on the amendment? It's going to be a floor amendment. Delegate Valentine.
Did have a question. Is the bill sponsor aware of this?
Yes, the bill sponsor is aware of it. Delegate Young, who raised the issue, is aware of it. The FOP, the chiefs of sheriffs, everybody is aware of it, I believe, at this point. I certainly hope so. The vice chair has worked very hard on this to address an issue that came up, and I think that this addresses that issue.
Thank you.
All right. All in favor of the amendment, please raise your hands. Anybody opposed? Amendment is adopted and will be offered on the floor as a floor amendment. We'll be bringing that bill back to second reader to do it. We're going to stop right now because the bells have rung, and we may come back later tonight. Thank you very much.